You try to smile. You try to say the right thing. You try to help. Be calm. Be kind. Be reasonable. Be everything that others expect of you, and everything you were taught to expect of yourself. But inside, something trembles. Not weakness. Not evil. But something, forgotten. Something real. How many times have you silenced your own truth just to keep the image intact? How often have you sacrificed your voice on the altar of being the good one? Before we continue, I invite you to subscribe to the channel, leave a comment with your reflections, like this video, and share it with someone who also carries this invisible weight. You never know who might be silently drowning in the effort to stay good. This video is not just about exhaustion. It's about a hidden war inside your soul, a psychological knot tied in early childhood and reinforced by culture, religion, trauma, and fear. We'll dive into the shadow, as Carl Jung would say. Into the invisible patterns of morality that no longer serve you, but that you keep obeying. We'll confront the quiet resentment of always saying yes, and the slow self-destruction hidden beneath perfection. Imagine this, you're walking through life chained by golden ropes. They look beautiful. They shine in the sunlight. People praise you for them. But they're still ropes. You're still not free. But, what if the very thing you call failure is your soul trying to scream for air? What if your so-called flaws are just the suppressed wildness of a spirit that's been caged too long? We often sabotage the very things we crave the most, not because we're weak, but because we've been trained to distrust our own desires. Deep down, there's a voice that says, "Who do you think you are to want this? To deserve this? To be free?" That voice is not yours. It's the echo of a lifetime of conditioning. We avoid silence because silence reveals that voice. And so we keep moving, keep pleasing, keep performing, afraid that if we ever stop, we might hear the unbearable truth: we've built our self-worth on the fragile approval of others. Carl Jung once wrote, "No one becomes enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." The darkness he spoke of is not evil, it's simply the parts of ourselves we've buried. The anger we weren't allowed to feel. The ambition we were told was selfish. The need for rest we labeled as laziness. When we deny the shadow, it doesn't disappear. It waits. It acts from underneath. It becomes resentment. It becomes addiction. It becomes chronic self-doubt. We think we're being good, but often we're just being obedient to an invisible system of guilt and fear. Friedrich Nietzsche challenged us to become who we are. But who we are isn't just the curated version we show the world. It includes the contradictions, the chaos, the instincts we were taught to suppress. Morality, when weaponized, becomes a cage. We begin to conflate compliance with virtue. We mistake self-erasure for compassion. We turn ourselves into performances, beautiful, polished, dead inside. This is the soul's crisis, to want freedom, but to fear rejection. To yearn for authenticity, but to feel unworthy of being seen. Our inner world becomes a courtroom, desire on trial, guilt as the judge, and perfectionism as the impossible law. So we choose safety. We stay nice. But inside, we're exhausted. We don't burn out from doing too much. We burn out from never being ourselves. These unconscious patterns, ingrained in childhood, reinforced by society, shape our relationships, our careers, our spiritual paths. We overextend. We over-apologize. We underdream. Why? Because somewhere along the way, we learned that love had to be earned. That we were only lovable if we were useful, agreeable, flawless. So we carry this invisible contract: I will sacrifice myself, if you just promise not to leave. But here's the truth, the self you keep sacrificing is the only one who can lead you to real peace. Not the mask. Not the martyr. The whole you. Even the parts you were told to hide. Especially those parts. Look closely. Not at the world. Not at others. Look at you. That fear of abandonment you carry in relationships, is it really about them, or about the first time you felt invisible as a child? That constant drive to be productive, needed, helpful, where does it come from? What are you trying to prove? And to whom? Sometimes, what we call personality is just pain dressed up as habit. Sometimes, the things you chase are merely distractions from a wound you were never allowed to name. We like to believe the problem is out there, in the job, in the partner, in society, in luck. But the most persistent suffering often comes from within. Not from failure itself, but from the meaning we attach to failure. From the harsh inner voice that says, you should have done more. You should have known better. You're not enough. That voice is old. It didn't start with you. It started when you were too small to question it. So you believed it. And now you live according to its rules. As Jung warned, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. That job you keep losing, that love that never works out, that creative dream that always seems just out of reach, what if they're not failures? What if they're symptoms? Symptoms of an internal conflict between who you really are, and who you were told you had to be to survive? We all carry a shadow, a collection of rejected feelings, desires, memories, instincts. We bury them to belong. But they never disappear. As Gabor Maté describes, undigested pain becomes behavior. We lash out, shut down, sabotage opportunities, not because we're broken, but because we're hurting. Deeply. Quietly. Repeatedly. And the more we deny the pain, the more it shows up in disguise, as anxiety, perfectionism, addiction, even spiritual bypassing. You can't heal what you won't confront. And confrontation isn't violence, it's honesty. It's finally admitting, I'm tired of pretending. It's letting yourself grieve the years you spent being someone you thought the world wanted. It's recognizing that the perfect image you built is also the wall between you and your truest self. Because here's the hardest truth of all, the cost of being good all the time is often your soul. Transformation doesn't begin with a breakthrough. It begins with a pause. A breath. A moment of brutal honesty where you stop running and whisper to yourself, I don't want to keep living as him. Not out of anger. Not out of despair. But out of a quiet knowing that something deeper in you is asking to be seen. The first step isn't changing who you are. It's recognizing who you've been forced to be. There is no magic formula. No overnight healing. But there is awareness. And awareness is a revolution. When you start to look at your fears, not as enemies, but as messages, you begin to shift. When you sit with your pain, not to fix it, but to feel it, you begin to understand. The parts of you that were silenced don't need punishment. They need presence. Because change doesn't happen when you blame yourself. Change begins when you finally recognize yourself. Self-knowledge isn't always pretty. It demands that you face your contradictions. That you admit how much of your life was built to please, to perform, to survive. But there's power in this recognition. Viktor Frankl reminded us that between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space, we have the power to choose. Not from the unconscious wounds of the past, but from the clarity of the present. To look inward with courage is to reclaim your authority. You begin to question the old scripts, who told me I had to be perfect to be loved? You stop negotiating your worth through sacrifice. You start embracing your limits, your rhythms, your truth. It doesn't mean you stop being kind, it means you stop being inauthentic in the name of kindness. Real goodness doesn't come from denial. It comes from integration. There's pain in this process. Of course there is. As Schopenhauer wrote, compassion is the basis of morality, and that includes compassion for yourself. You'll grieve the years spent behind the mask. You'll feel the ache of unmet needs. But you'll also taste something new, freedom. Not the loud, reckless kind. But a subtle, steady freedom born from finally being honest about who you are. And slowly, the exhaustion begins to fade. Not because life becomes easier, but because you stop carrying what was never yours to hold. Because now, when you look in the mirror, you don't just see someone trying to be good. You see someone finally learning to be whole. There is no final answer. No perfect version of you waiting at the end of some path. There is only this moment, this breath, this choice to stop living on autopilot. Maybe transformation isn't about becoming someone new, but about returning to who you were before you started hiding. The journey is not a straight line. It's a spiral. And with every turn, you meet yourself a little more deeply. So here's your invitation, observe yourself today. Without judgment, just presence. Notice when you shrink to please. When you smile without meaning it. When you say, yes, while your soul whispers, no. Pay attention to your silences. To your subtle addictions. To the fear behind your perfection. Just notice. Because awareness, when met with compassion, begins to dissolve what once felt immovable. Are you ready to stop running from yourself? Ready to face your shadow and realize it has something to teach you, too? If this message touched something in you, please like this video, share it with someone who might be tired of pretending to be okay, and leave a comment with your reflections. We read every one. If this content spoke to your soul, watch the video that's now on your screen. It might be exactly what your soul needs to hear today.